A fateful purchase. The Kuriza spaceport buzzed with activity as Captain Jace Novak strode through the crowds of humans and aliens haggling, bartering, and hustling. His lean frame, clad in a weathered brown flight jacket and cargos, wove through the chaos with purpose. Steel-gray eyes scanned the stalls, seeking one particular merchant. Jace needed a ship. Months of scrimping and saving had left him just enough credits to purchase a basic freighter. It wouldn't be much, probably some dilapidated rust bucket, but it would be a start. With a ship, Jace could finally leave behind the life of a down-on-his-luck pilot for hire and begin building his own shipping enterprise. Captain Novak. A reedy voice cut through the din. Over here. In a dimly lit back corner of the spaceport loomed Magnus Orzo, a lanky humanoid with pale, almost translucent skin and dark, liquid eyes that never stopped darting about. Orzo had a reputation for acquiring ships with complicated, legal statuses at rock-bottom prices. Jace didn't care. He needed cheap and fast, no questions asked. Orzo, Jace greeted, his voice neutral. You said you had a ship for me. Oh yes, Captain. A real beauty. Orzo's thin lips stretched into an unsettling approximation of a smile. Decommissioned a Trillon freighter. The Celestia. Needs a bit of TLC, but she's got good bones. And all yours for the low price we discussed. Jace's eyes narrowed. What's the catch? Why so cheap? Orzo spread his long-fingered hands disarmingly. No catch. Just eager to find the right buyer who can appreciate her unique history. Do we have a deal? Every instinct screamed for Jace to walk away, that this was too good to be true. But the allure of finally having his own ship, the key to a new life, overshadowed his misgivings. Deal. Transfer me the codes. Orzo nodded, his smile widening as he tapped his datapad. A pleasure, Captain. Docking Bay 94. She's all yours. As Jace strode away, a tight grin tugged at his lips. He had a ship. His fortunes were about to change. The Celestia loomed before Jace, a hulking mass of pitted gray alloy and scarred viewports. He ran a hand along her bruised hull, feeling the ship's history in every ding and scrape. Up close, her dilapidated state became even more apparent. It would take months of work to get her space-worthy again. Good thing he wasn't afraid of a little elbow grease. Jace punched in his new access codes and waited as the loading ramp slowly lowered, hydraulics groaning from disuse. Trepidation and excitement warred within his gut as he stepped aboard his ship for the first time. The interior was dark, the air stale with the tang of ozone and grease. Jace activated his comm light, sweeping the beam along the low ceiling of the cargo bay. Elongated shadows stretched across walls stained with rust and peeling paint. Undeterred, Jace made his way to the cockpit. Minimal oil and grit caked the control surfaces. Sliding into the pilot's chair, he punched the ignition sequence. Nothing. He tried again. The console remained dark and lifeless. Orzo, you swindling bastard, Jace growled under his breath. Guess I'm starting this restoration from scratch. As he moved to heave himself out of the chair, an icy feminine voice from the shadows froze him in place. Don't bother. She'll never fly for you. Jace spun, hand darting for his blaster. In the glow of the comm light, an alien girl emerged from the darkened doorway. Lithe and long-limbed, her skin shimmered an iridescent blue, almost glowing in the low light. Pupil-less silver eyes bore into Jace from an angular face framed by a wild mane of jet-black hair. She wore a fitted black flight suit, utility belt slung low around her narrow hips. One blue hand rested casually on the hilt of an energy blade at her side, but her posture spoke of coiled readiness. She cocked her head, studying Jace as if he were a vaguely amusing puzzle. Jace forced his own body to relax, easing his hand away from his blaster. Who the hell are you? And what are you doing on my ship? A low, humorless chuckle emanated from the girl as she stepped further into the cockpit. Your ship. Oh, the delicious irony. No, human, I believe it is you who are trespassing on my ship. Jace scoffed. Hate to break it to you, Blue, but I just bought this bucket of bolts from Magnus Orzo. Paid credits and everything. So how about you get your shimmery ass off my ship before I toss you in the nearest airlock? The girl smiled, a flash of white, sharp teeth. Captain Jace Novak. Yes, I know who you are. And I know all about your little deal with that worm Orzo. But it seems he failed to mention one tiny detail. She leaned in, silver eyes glittering. I'm Zephyr and the Celestia already belongs to me. Uneasy alliance. Jace stared at Zephyr, his mind reeling. This couldn't be happening. He'd sunk every last credit into this ship, and now this alien girl was claiming it was hers? Listen, Zephyr, or whatever your name is, Jace ground out, I don't know what game you're playing, but I have the codes to this ship. Legally, she's mine. So either produce some documentation proving she's yours, or get the hell off my property. Zephyr's smile never wavered as she sauntered over to the co-pilot's chair and draped herself across it languidly. Oh, Captain Novak, legality is such a slippery concept. Especially out here in the fringe. She waved a dismissive blue hand. But I'll bite. The Celestia was appropriated from my previous employer. Let's just say we had a falling out over certain precious cargo I liberated. Jace's eyes narrowed. You stole this ship. Such an ugly word. Zephyr picked at an imaginary speck on her flight suit. I prefer to think of it as an involuntary transfer of ownership. Jace pinched the bridge of his nose, feeling a headache blooming behind his eyes. This was not how he'd envisioned his first day as a ship's captain going. Look, I don't care about your sordid history. I bought this ship fair and square. So you can either leave voluntarily, or I'll happily toss you out the airlock myself. Zephyr's hand moved casually to rest on the hilt of her energy blade. I'd like to see you try, human. Her silver eyes glittered dangerously. But perhaps there's a third option you haven't considered. Despite himself, Jace felt his curiosity piqued. He crossed his arms, leaning back against the console. I'm listening. Zephyr leaned forward, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. What if I told you that this ship is far more valuable than you realize? That within her rusting hull lies technology that could revolutionize space travel as we know it? Jace scoffed. I'd say you're full of Zarelian snark dung. Zephyr's lips curved into a sly grin. Ah, but I have proof. Tell me, Captain, have you ever heard of a quantum flux drive? Jace frowned. Vaguely. Some theoretical propulsion system that could allow ships to jump vast distances instantly. But that's all it is, a theory. No one's ever gotten it to work. Zephyr's grin widened. No one human, perhaps. But the Atrillans? They cracked the code decades ago. And their prototype just happens to be installed in this very ship. Jace's eyes widened as the implications sank in. If what Zephyr said was true, the Celestia was worth a fortune. With that kind of technology, he could do a lot more than just start a modest shipping company. He could revolutionize the entire industry. But there had to be a catch. Let's say I believe you, Jace said slowly. Why would you tell me this? What's in it for you? Zephyr's expression turned serious. Because I need your help, Jace Novak. The corporation I stole this ship from, Parallax Dynamics, they'll stop at nothing to get it back. I've been fighting them off for months, but my resources are running thin. I need an ally, someone with the skills to help me unlock the Celestia's full potential before Parallax finds us. Jace chewed his lower lip, considering. Every instinct screamed at him to eject this crazy alien from his ship and his life. But the lure of the payout she dangled was too tempting to ignore. If he played this right, he could come out of this filthy rich and with a ship beyond his wildest dreams. "All right, Zephyr," he said finally. "I'll bite. Let's say we work together to get this quantum what's-it operational. We split the profits 50/50ths when we sell it. Then we go our separate ways and never see each other again. Deal?" Zephyr unfolded herself from the co-pilot's chair, extending a slender blue hand. "Deal. Partners?" Jace hesitated for only a moment before clasping her hand with his own. Her skin was cool and smooth, her grip surprisingly strong. "Partners. For now." As they shook, Jace couldn't shake the feeling that he'd just made a deal with the devil. But with the promise of untold riches on the horizon, he was willing to take the risk. Even if it meant working with the insufferable, maddening, and undeniably intriguing alien who just hijacked his destiny. Secrets and sparks. Over the next few weeks, Jace and Zephyr fell into an uneasy routine aboard the Celestia. By day, they worked tirelessly to repair and retrofit the ship, prepping it for the monumental task of integrating the experimental quantum flux drive. Jace found himself grudgingly impressed by Zephyr's technical prowess. The alien girl seemed to possess an innate understanding of the ship's systems, coaxing life back into long-dormant circuits and conjuring miracles from the aging tech. Together, they slowly transformed the derelict freighter into something resembling a functional vessel once more. But it was during the long night cycle, as they pored over schematics and theoretical models, that Jace began to see a different side of his enigmatic partner. Zephyr spoke passionately of her people's long history of scientific achievement, her silver eyes sparking with intensity as she described the wonders of a Trillion technology. "Imagine it, Jace," she said one night, her blue skin luminous in the glow of the holographic display. "With the quantum flux drive, we could cross the galaxy in mere hours. Explore uncharted worlds, make first contact with unknown species. It would change everything." Jace leaned back in his chair, regarding her thoughtfully. "But parallax dynamics, why would they want to suppress this? Seems like they could make a fortune off this tech." Zephyr's expression darkened. "Because they fear what they cannot control. A universe where their monopoly on interstellar travel is threatened." She clenched a fist. "They'd rather hoard this knowledge, parcel it out in pieces to maintain their stranglehold. But I won't let them. This technology belongs to everyone." Jace found himself drawn to her fierce idealism, the way her whole being seemed to blaze with purpose. It was a stark contrast to his own jaded cynicism, honed by years of scratching out a living on the fringes of society. As the days bled into weeks, Jace felt the walls he'd so carefully constructed begin to crumble. He found himself looking forward to their late-night talks, the easy banter that flowed between them as they worked. He caught himself admiring the way her lithe form moved through the ship, the graceful efficiency of her long fingers as they danced across control panels. It was during one such moment, as they sat shoulder to shoulder in the cramped engine room, that it happened. Zephyr was elbow-deep in a tangle of wires, her brow furrowed in concentration. Jace reached over to hand her a tool and their fingers brushed, a jolt of electricity seeming to arc between them. Zephyr stilled, her silver eyes meeting his. For a long, charged moment, neither of them moved, the air heavy with sudden tension. Then, slowly, deliberately, Zephyr leaned in, her cool lips brushing against his in a feather-light kiss. Jace's heart thundered in his chest as he pulled her closer, deepening the kiss. Zephyr melted against him, her lithe body molding to his as if they were two halves of a whole. In that moment, all thoughts of quantum drives and shady corporations fell away, replaced by the overwhelming need to lose himself in her. They came together in a tangle of limbs and gasping breaths, the heat of their passion a stark contrast to the cool metal surrounding them. Jace marveled at the feel of her, the alien smoothness of her skin, the way she seemed to glow in the dim light. Afterwards, as they lay entwined on the narrow bunk in Jace's quarters, Zephyr traced patterns on his sweat-slicked chest, her touch sending shivers down his spine. "This complicates things, doesn't it?" she murmured, her voice uncharacteristically vulnerable. Jace tightened his arm around her, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "Probably. But I'm a fan of complicated." Zephyr huffed a laugh, snuggling closer. "Good. Because our lives are about to get a whole lot more complicated." As if on cue, the ship's proximity alarm began to blare, jolting them both upright. Jace scrambled for his clothes, his heart in his throat. "What is it?" Zephyr was already out the door, racing for the cockpit. "Parallax," she called over her shoulder. "They've found us." Jace cursed, yanking on his boots and sprinting after her. He knew this tentative peace couldn't last forever, but he'd hoped they'd have more time. Time to finish the drive, to explore this new thrilling thing between them. But as he slid into the pilot's chair next to Zephyr, taking in the sight of the massive Parallax cruiser bearing down on them, he knew that time had just run out. They were outgunned and outclassed in every way. Jace's mind raced, seeking any path that didn't end with them dead or captured. Then his gaze fell on the flashing indicators of the quantum flux drive, untested, unproven, and possibly their only hope. He met Zephyr's eyes, saw his own desperate plan reflected there. She nodded once, her jaw set with grim determination. "Punch it," she said. And with a deep breath and a silent prayer, Jace did just that, sending them hurtling into the unknown. A desperate gamble. The Celestia shuddered violently as Jace engaged the quantum flux drive, the ship's structural integrity groaning under the strain of the untested technology. Zephyr gripped the edges of the console, her knuckles pale blue as she fought to maintain control. "Jace," she shouted over the rising whine of the engines. "The quantum field is destabilizing. We need to abort." Jace gritted his teeth, his fingers flying over the controls as he tried to coax more power from the protesting systems. "No. We're almost there. Just a little longer." On the view screen, the stars stretched into long, shimmering lines as the Celestia surged forward, the pursuing Parallax cruiser dwindling to a speck behind them. For a breathless moment, Jace thought they'd done it, that they'd escaped. Then, with a sickening lurch, the ship shuddered and the stars snapped back into pinpricks of light. The engine sputtered and died, leaving them drifting in the suffocating silence of dead space. Zephyr sagged back in her chair, her silver eyes wide with disbelief. "We're alive," she breathed. "I can't believe it." Jace ran a trembling hand through his hair, his heart still racing. "What happened? Why did we drop out of whatever that was?" Zephyr was already pulling up diagnostic screens, her brow furrowed in concentration. "The quantum field collapsed. Looks like the drive burned itself out." She slammed a fist against the console in frustration. Zarelian snark dung. "We were so close." Jace reached over, covering her hand with his own. "Hey, we're alive. That's what matters. We'll figure out the rest." Zephyr met his gaze, her expression softening. "You're right. I wanted this so badly. To finally have a way to break Parallax's hold, to change everything." Jace squeezed her hand. "We'll find another way. Together. But first, we need to figure out where the hell we are." As if in answer, the comm system crackled to life, a stern female voice filling the cockpit. "Unknown vessel, this is Commander Ilara Voss of Parallax Dynamics. You have unlawfully appropriated corporate property. Surrender the ship and its cargo immediately, or you will be destroyed." Jace and Zephyr exchanged a look of pure panic. "I thought we lost them." Jace hissed. Zephyr's fingers danced over the controls, desperately trying to coax the engines back to life. "We did. They must have had a ship waiting in case we tried something like this. The comm crackled again. Unknown vessel, this is your final warning. Surrender now, or face the consequences. Jace's mind raced, seeking any solution, any way out of this impossible situation. Then, slowly, an idea began to take shape. A terrible, desperate, possibly suicidal idea. He turned to Zephyr, his expression grim. Do you trust me? She searched his face for a long moment, then nodded. With my life. Jace took a deep breath, then reached for the comm. Commander Voss, this is Captain Jace Novak. We surrender. Zephyr's eyes widened in shock. Jace, what are you doing? He silenced her with a look, then continued. We will comply with your demands. But I wish to negotiate the terms of our surrender in person. Aboard your ship. There was a long, tense pause. Then Commander Voss's voice returned, laced with suspicion. And why would I agree to that? Jace put every ounce of sincerity he could muster into his voice. Because I have information you need. About the quantum flux drive. But I'll only share it in person. Another long pause. Then, grudgingly, very well. You and your companion will be brought aboard. Any signs of treachery, and you'll both be vented into space. Voss out. As the comm went dead, Zephyr rounded on Jace, her expression livid. Are you insane? You're just going to hand us over to them? Jace gripped her shoulders, his gaze intense. Zeph, listen to me. It's the only way. We can't outrun them, and we can't outfight them. But maybe, just maybe, we can outsmart them. He quickly outlined his plan as understanding dawned in Zephyr's eyes. It was a gamble, a desperate Hail Mary pass with their lives as the stakes. But it was the only move they had left. As the Parallax ship's docking clamps latched onto the Celestia's hull with a shuddering clang, Jace pulled Zephyr into a fierce, desperate kiss. No matter what happens, he murmured against her lips, I don't regret a single moment of this. Of us. Zephyr clung to him, her eyes shining with unshed tears. Nor do I, partners. Partners, Jace agreed. Then, squaring his shoulders, he turned to face the airlock as it cycled open with a hiss, ready to meet his fate head-on. Commander Ilara Voss was every bit as imposing in person as she was over the comm. Tall and lean, with severe features and close-cropped silver hair, she radiated an aura of icy authority as she strode into the Celestia's cargo bay, flanked by a phalanx of armed guards. Captain Novak, she greeted coolly. And the traitor Zephyr. I must admit, I'm impressed by your audacity, if not your intelligence. Did you really think you could steal from Parallax and get away with it? Zephyr bristled, but Jace laid a warning hand on her arm. We didn't steal anything. The Celestia was decommissioned. I bought her fair and square. Voss's lip curled in a sneer. Spare me your semantics. The quantum flux drive is Parallax property, as is any vessel carrying it. Now, you will hand over all your research and the drive components, and if I'm feeling generous, I may let you live out your days in a Parallax labor camp instead of a shallow grave. Jace met her gaze steadily, his heart pounding in his chest. This was it, the moment of truth. I'm afraid I can't do that, Commander. Voss's eyes narrowed. Oh? And why is that? Jace held up a small, innocuous-looking data chip. Because I've already transmitted all our research and the drive schematics to every major news outlet and scientific institution in the galaxy. If anything happens to us, they'll know exactly what Parallax has been hiding. Your secret will be out. It was a bluff, of course. The data chip contained nothing more than Jace's collection of trashy holonovels. But Voss didn't need to know that. The commander's face paled, her jaw clenching. You're lying. Jace shrugged. Maybe. But can you afford to take that chance? The public backlash against Parallax would be devastating. Your stock prices would plummet. You'd be tied up in litigation for decades. For a long, tense moment, no one moved. Then, slowly, Voss lowered her blaster. "What do you want?" she ground out. Jace allowed himself a small, triumphant smile. "Here's the deal. You let us go, with the Celestia and the drive. In return, we keep this little incident to ourselves. Parallax's reputation remains untarnished, and you get to keep your cozy corporate empire." Voss's eyes flashed with barely contained rage, but Jace could see her calculating the angles, weighing the risks. Finally, she gave a short, sharp nod. "Fine. Take your garbage scow and get out of my sight. But mark my words, Captain Novak. This isn't over. Parallax will not forget this insult." Jace sketched a mocking bow. "I'm counting on it, Commander. I do so love our little chats." Then, before Voss could change her mind, he grabbed Zephyr's hand and beat a hasty retreat back to the Celestia, his heart singing with elation and relief. They'd done it. Against all odds, they'd pulled off the impossible. And though he knew Voss's threat was far from idle, in that moment, with Zephyr by his side and a galaxy of possibilities stretching out before them, Jace felt invincible. "Where to now, partner?" she asked as they settled into the cockpit, the stars once more theirs for the taking. Jace grinned, already plotting their next move. "Wherever trouble takes us. The Celestia may not have a quantum flux drive anymore, but I have a feeling our adventures are just getting started." Into the unknown. The Celestia soared through the infinite expanse of space, her engines thrumming with renewed purpose. In the weeks since their fateful confrontation with Commander Voss, Jace and Zephyr had thrown themselves into repairing and upgrading the ship, determined to make her a force to be reckoned with. Gone were the rusting hull plates and failing life support systems, replaced by gleaming alloy and state-of-the-art tech scavenged from a dozen spaceports across the quadrant. The quantum flux drive may have been lost, but the Celestia was far from toothless. Jace leaned back in the pilot's chair, a contented smile playing at his lips as he watched the stars streak by. Beside him, Zephyr was a mirror of focused intensity, her long fingers dancing over the navigation controls as she plotted their next jump. The Kellinon Nebula? Jace quirked an eyebrow at her choice. "Isn't that Juker Syndicate territory?" Zephyr flashed him a mischievous grin. "Exactly. And rumor has it they just hit a Parallax supply depot. I'm thinking they might be in the market for some shiny new hardware we just happen to have liberated from a certain corporate tyrant." Jace chuckled, shaking his head in amazement. In the short time he'd known her, Zephyr had proven to have a mind as devious as it was brilliant. "You're going to get us killed one of these days, you know that?" She leaned over, planting a quick, searing kiss on his lips. But what a way to go. As they broke apart, a chime from the comm drew their attention. Jace frowned at the unfamiliar frequency, then shrugged and hit the accept key. "Captain Novak of the Celestia. Who's hailing?" The screen flickered to life, revealing a face that made Jace's blood run cold. Commander Voss stared back at them, her severe features set in a mask of grim determination. "Novak," she bit out, as if the name left a foul taste in her mouth. "You've led us on quite the chase." Jace exchanged a worried glance with Zephyr, his mind racing. How had Voss found them so quickly? They'd been so careful, taking random jumps, covering their tracks. As if sensing his thoughts, Voss's lip curled in a triumphant sneer. "Did you really think we wouldn't have a tracker embedded in the Celestia systems? We've been monitoring your every move, waiting for the right moment to strike." Zephyr's eyes widened in horror, her hand flying to her mouth. "Jace. The quantum drive components. We never scanned them for trackers." Voss chuckled darkly. "Sloppy, Zephyr. I'd have expected better from one of my top engineers. But then, you always were blinded by your ridiculous idealism. Jace's gaze darted to the NAV screen, his heart sinking as he saw the half-dozen parallax signatures dropping out of hyperwarp, surrounding them on all sides. They were trapped, outgunned and outmatched. But as he turned back to the view screen, he saw something in Voss's expression that gave him pause. A flicker of uncertainty, quickly masked. In that instant, a wild, impossible idea took root in his mind. "You don't want the drive," he said slowly, the pieces falling into place. "Or the Celestia. This whole time, it's been about her, hasn't it?" He nodded to Zephyr. "About getting your star engineer back." Voss's eyes flashed with something like grudging respect. "Very astute, Captain. Zephyr represents a significant investment for Parallax. Her mind, her skills, they're far too valuable to let slip through our fingers." Zephyr drew herself up, her silver eyes flashing. "I'll never work for Parallax again, Voss. I'd rather die than be a part of your twisted schemes." Voss shrugged, unconcerned. "Oh, you'll work for us again, Zephyr. One way or another. The only question is, how much collateral damage will you allow before you accept the inevitable?" Her gaze shifted meaningfully to Jace. "I wonder, would your noble principles withstand watching your lover be slowly flayed alive? Or would you bend, to spare him that fate?" Jace felt a chill run down his spine at the casual cruelty in her voice. But beneath the fear, a grim resolve was hardening in his gut. "Here's what's going to happen," he said, his voice steady. "You're going to let us go, Voss. You're going to call off your dogs and forget you ever heard the names Jace Novak or Zephyr. And in return, we won't blow the lid off Parallax's dirty little secrets." Voss scoffed. "Still clinging to that bluff, Novak? I call. Transmit the data, if you actually have any. But know that it will be the last thing you ever do." Jace smiled grimly. "Funny thing about that. We may not have had the evidence before, but we sure as hell do now." He tapped a key, and the screen split, revealing a second transmission, this one to a very familiar news network. "Grayson Lee, Galactic News Network," the eager-looking reporter chirped. "Mr. Novak, you said you had a story of galactic importance?" Jace grinned at Voss's rapidly paling face. "Oh, do I ever? How would you like an exclusive exposé on Parallax Dynamics' secret attempts to suppress faster-than-light technology? Complete with recorded evidence directly from the company's own commander?" He held up the data chip, waggling it tauntingly at Voss. "Amazing what these little beauties can pick up, isn't it? Especially when the villain helpfully monologues her entire evil scheme." Grayson looked like all his Christmases had come at once. "Send it on over, Mr. Novak. I think the galaxy deserves to hear this." Jace paused, his finger hovering over the transmit key, his eyes locked with Voss's. "Last chance, Commander. What's it going to be?" For a long, tense moment, no one spoke. Then, with a snarl of pure fury, Voss slammed her fist down on her console. "This isn't over, Novak," she hissed. "You and your little traitor can run to the ends of the universe, but Parallax will find you. That's a promise." Then the screen went dark as she cut the transmission. Jace slumped back in his seat, his heart racing. He turned to Zephyr, a shaky grin spreading across his face. "Guess this means our honeymoon's over, huh?" To his surprise, she laughed, a sound of pure, unbridled joy. Then she was in his arms, kissing him with a fierce passion that stole his breath. "Oh, Jace," she murmured against his lips. "Don't you see? It's only just beginning." And as the Celestia leapt into hyperwarp, leaving Parallax and their past lives dwindling in their wake, Jace knew she was right. Whatever the future held, whatever dangers and adventures lay ahead, they would face them together. Partners in crime, in love, in every sense of the word.